So the concepts that we have studied so far, namely diversification, Sharpe ratio, risk premium, can actually help us to understand several other interesting concepts that often come up in risk management. So two such concepts, which are related but actually different, are what is known as risk pooling and risk sharing. And these are basically the foundations of the insurance industry. So let us see what these concepts actually refer to. So risk pooling basically means that you can merge uncorrelated risky projects as a way of reducing risk, right? So if we think about it from an insurance company's perspective, this would say that if you are just selling an insurance product to one person, that is risky in the sense that that person has probably a good chance of getting involved in an accident. But if you are selling it to multiple such people whose chances of getting into accident are uncorrelated with each other, then the situation would be less risky because you have basically managed to kind of like pool the risk, right? So this application of risk pooling has come to be known as insurance principle because it is so often kind of like thought about when we are thinking about any insurance, right? And the common thought is that this actually is how risk pooling works, and this is how it helps to reduce the risk, right? And this is the considered to be the main driving force behind risk management for insurance industry. So what we want to do is we want to examine this idea a bit more deeply and think about, okay, is it just enough to just add these different kind of like uncorrelated risky projects and it would just reduce risk on its own? So this is actually analogous to asking that can you just add bets that are independent of one's other bets to reduce one's total exposure to risk? And to perhaps think about the problem, let us consider the following example. So imagine that you have a gambler who is tossing a coin. So this coin is not really fair in the sense that the probability of heads is, let's say, 0.4 and probability of tails is 0.6. And the gambler actually is going to win 100 rupees every time a heads comes up, and it's going to lose 100 rupees every time a tails comes up. So the gambler knows that this is not a fair coin, but is still interested in kind of playing, right? So on average, then he would be expected to be losing 20 rupees for each time the coin is being flipped. So the gambler makes the following arguments. It says that, okay, if we kind of like do it once, maybe, we have a high chance of losing. But if we actually kind of like keep playing multiple times, then this should actually reduce the risk, right? Now, it is true that in the sense that the outcome becomes more predictable in terms of the number of tosses that will result in heads, or rather the proportion of tosses that will result in heads. But it is not clear that actually this would actually help to reduce the risk, right? Why is that the case? Because now the gambler has more money at stake, right? So compared to before, where if he was just tossing the coin once, then he would win 100 or lose 100. But now if he tosses the coin, let's say 10 times, then he's going to be losing maximum of 1,000 and winning maximum of 1,000, right? So if you increase the number of tosses, this is going to lead to greater spread between the amount of money that he can potentially win versus the amount of money that he can potentially lose. And in some sense, this actually increases the risk, right? So there's a difference between saying that, how much is going to be average gain or loss per bet, how predictable that becomes, versus asking how much is his total gain or loss going to become, how predictable that becomes, right? So you have got this distinction that becomes important. So let's look at another example to fix our ideas. So imagine that you have an investor, Shiraj, who holds 1 unit of money in a portfolio P. Now, this portfolio is actually invested in a risky asset A, as well as in a risk-free asset. So the weight of the portfolio in this risky asset A is W, and therefore the fraction 1 minus W is invested in the risk-free asset. Now, what do we know about asset A? So asset A's risk premium is R and its standard deviation is sigma. So based on this, we can actually calculate what's the risk premium of the uh, entire portfolio P. So remember, risk premium is the difference between the expected return minus the risk-free rate. So then based on this, we can calculate that the risk premium of the entire portfolio is going to be W times R, where W is the weight on the risky asset and R is the risk premium on this risky asset. The standard deviation of this portfolio is going to be W times sigma, where again, sigma is the standard deviation of the risky asset, right? So once we have the risk premium and the standard deviation, we can calculate the Sharpe ratio, and we can see that that's equal to here R by sigma. So this was the initial situation. And now suppose that Shiraj comes across another risky asset B, which has very similar characteristics as A, in the sense that it has the same risk premium R and the same standard deviation sigma as A. So the good thing about this asset is that its returns are uncorrelated with asset A. So we can think of this A and B as uncorrelated assets. And Shiraj thinks that, okay, this seems like a good way to diversify and reduce risk, right? So what he plans to do is that he plans to invest a similar amount of his portfolio in B as he had invested in A, right? So remember, he had invested a fraction W in A and 1 minus W in the risk-free asset, right? And now what he's going to do is that he's going to invest an additional fraction B in this asset B, and he's going to take that by reducing the fraction invested in the risk-free asset. So earlier the fraction invested in the risk-free asset was 1 minus W. Now he's going to invest 1 minus 2W in the risk-free asset, W in B and W in A. So let's denote this portfolio by Z. Okay, so this new composition. So what do we know about the risk and the Sharpe ratio of this portfolio Z? So first, let's look at the risk premium of Z. So this is going to be given by 2WR. In case this is confusing, I encourage you to write down the the returns of this portfolio Z, and then look at the expectation of that minus the risk-free rate, and you should hopefully get this expression. We can also look at the variance of this portfolio. So this is again using the formula for variance that we have seen before. Remember, you have got a fraction W invested in an asset A, which has variance sigma square, a fraction W, which is invested in an asset which has variance sigma square. This is asset B. And the remaining 1 minus W is invested in an asset, which is the risk-free asset, which has variance 0, right? And the returns are uncorrelated. So if you use the variance formula, which is the summation Wi, Wj, sigma ij, you will end up getting this term, right? That it's 2W square sigma square, right? And so therefore, what's the standard deviation? That is the square root of this variance. So therefore, you have got square root of 2 times W sigma, right? So we have got the risk premium of Z, we have got the standard deviation of Z. We can use this to actually back out what's the Sharpe ratio of Z. And it turns out to be square root of 2 times R by sigma. Now, if you compare this with the same characteristics in portfolio P, you can observe that basically compared to portfolio P, the Sharpe ratio is now higher, right? So it's more profitable in that sense. But it is also true that the standard deviation is also higher, right? So earlier it was just, you noticed, it was just W sigma. Now it's square root of 2 into W sigma. So square root of 2 is more than 1. And so therefore the standard deviation is also higher, right? So Sharpe ratio is higher, that is good, but risk is also higher, right? So it's not correct to say that just risk pooling in the way that we have discussed actually leads to lower risk. You can generalize this to n different assets as well, rather than just looking at 2 different assets. So in that case, the Sharpe ratio would actually increase to square root of n times R by sigma, and the standard deviation also increases to square root of n times this W sigma. Okay. All right. So what do we get from here? So basically, pooling actually increases the scale of the risky investment. So earlier, only W fraction of the portfolio was invested, but now 2 times W fraction is invested. But this is happening because we are adding an additional position in another risky asset, right? So as we saw, this actually helped in terms of improving the Sharpe ratio, but it also did not actually reduce the risk, right? So the addition of the risky bet actually increased the size of the risky budget. And therefore, what we saw is that just risk pooling on its own is not enough to reduce risk, although it does bring about benefits in the sense that the Sharpe ratio actually increased, right? So that's point number one. Okay. So what is the insurance principle therefore telling us? So it's telling us that that risk increases less than proportionately to the number of policies insured when policies are correlated, right? So again, if we go from here, the reason why the Sharpe ratio is increasing is because you can see that the risk premium is increasing linearly, right? So earlier it was WR. Once you added in another asset, it became 2WR. And if you added in n different assets, it would have been NWR, right? But we can observe that the standard deviation is not increasing linearly, right? You have got these uncorrelated assets. So earlier the standard deviation was W sigma. Now it's square root of 2 W sigma, right? So compared to the risk premium, which is increasing linearly in the number of assets on which you are investing this amount, the standard deviation does not increase linearly, right? And as a result of that, what you have is that profitability, where again we are thinking of profitability as captured by the Sharpe ratio, increases, right? But it is not true that this on its own actually reduces the risk, right? So risk as measured by standard deviation, for instance, is going up, right? So risk pooling on its own is not enough for either investors or insurance companies to reduce risk. And in the gambling example, what we get is that as you are kind of like tossing the coin more and more, the probability that the gambler will lose will become more certain. But what is going to be the magnitude of this potential gains or losses, right? The amount of money that the gambler will end up winning or losing, that actually increases as well, right? So that is basically the point about risk pooling, right? So why then kind of like is the insurance strategy a good foundation for the way in which the industry operates? So this actually is because the increase in risk that you get from when you are risk pooling, that can actually be reduced by indulging in risk sharing, which is another strategy that we are going to see. Okay. So what is risk sharing? So let's consider this example again, just to understand how does this risk sharing strategy work. So remember that Shiraj had basically identified these two different risky assets. Let's call that just insurance policies in the context of our example. And he had he had wished to kind of like invest an amount which was equal to W in each of those two things, right? Remember, he had this fraction. He had the total portfolio of 1, and this is what he wanted to do before, right? And each of the policies had the same characteristics, right? So risk premium was R and standard deviation was sigma. And we had seen that the total risk in this portfolio Z was therefore given by W sigma times square root of 2, right? Now, suppose that this is more risk than he's actually willing to bear, right? So one option that he can do is he can involve himself in what is known as risk sharing. And this basically involves sharing shares in the portfolio to limit risk, okay, and to maintain the same ratio, the Sharpe ratio of the resulting position. So let's see how that works. So the strategy is very simple. Every time that Shiraj is going to add one more asset or insurance policy to his portfolio, he's going to sell off an amount from his other risky investments in the portfolio so as to keep the total amount invested in risky assets the same, right? So let's see how this works in the context of Shiraj moving from one risky asset to two risky assets in his portfolio. So initially he had 1 minus W in the risk-free asset and W in the risky asset A, right? Now, suppose that he wants to invest in another risky asset B in addition to risky asset A, right? But he wants to keep the total amount in the risky assets same, right? So what that means is that, the amount that should be in the risk-free asset should always be 1 minus W. But now the amount W, which was in a one risky asset, is going to be split into two different risky assets. So therefore, that's going to mean that there's going to be an amount equal to W by 2 invested in each of the risky assets, right? So let's see how this strategy plays out. So let's just call this strategy V just to keep in mind the calculations that we do. Okay. So if we compare portfolio Z to portfolio V, both involve investing in a pool of two risky assets, right? So it should be two risky assets, right? And one risk-free asset. So what's the weight of the total risky assets in strategy V or portfolio V? So that equals W instead of 2W from portfolio Z, right? So the risk premium of V we can calculate is equal to W times R, and the variance of V, because we have W by 2 invested in each of these risky assets, is going to become W square sigma square by 2, right? How do we get this? So basically, you have got W by 2 square times sigma square plus W by 2 square times sigma square, right? This is the variance. So therefore, this becomes basically 2 times W square by 4 times sigma square, right? So hence you end up getting this expression. And so therefore, the standard deviation is the square root of this. So that's going to be equal to W sigma by square root of 2. And now if you calculate the Sharpe ratio, dividing the risk premium by the standard deviation, you end up by getting square root of 2 times R by sigma, right? Now, if you compare this with what we saw in portfolio Z, you'll notice that this has the same Sharpe ratio as before, right? But this has got lower variance and therefore lower standard deviation compared to a portfolio Z, right? So it achieves the same profitability if we think of Sharpe ratio as a measure of profitability, but it actually has lower risk in the sense of lower standard deviations, right? Okay, so what this says is that just risk pooling is on its own is not enough to reduce the risk involved in selling insurance. But if you combine risk sharing with risk pooling, that actually helps you to achieve what you want, right? So if you have the risk sharing strategy and you can generalize this to n things, right? So then you can see that by increasing the number of assets that you are selling, the Sharpe ratio can be improved. But the variance actually is actually going down, right? In the sense of higher number of assets actually leads to lower variance, right? Okay, so actually diversification in the context of this insurance industry means that you are spreading a portfolio of fixed size across different assets, right? And you're not just merely adding different risky bets to an ever-growing increasing risky portfolio. And what it means in practice is that the way in which insurance industry operates is that not only does it sell or try to sell more policies, hopefully which are uncorrelated risks, but it also often actually reinsure the risk by selling off portions of the policies that they have sold to other investors or insurance companies, right? And once you do that, then these other insurance companies are actually liable for actually paying out this money in case the insurance event actually happens, right? So this is a way in which insurance companies actually explicitly share the risk, and this reinsurance is a major topic of study in insurance companies. And also interestingly, whenever you have got these financial institutions which played a role in this financial crisis, so this reinsurance was also a major phenomenon that had a lot of implications for how this industry is operated.